In late September 2004, in an interrogation room at the Mobile County Sheriff's Department in Alabama, sat a man arrested for murdering his neighbor. His name was Jeremy Bryan Jones. In the media, they called him a low-rent Ted Bundy because he had a face that put people at ease, a face skilled at masking itself behind politeness and casual charm. To those around him, Jones was a good young man, a good partner. However, in his own telling, he was a serial killer who had spent 12 years crossing 5 states, taking 20 lives. With the help of a polygraph, Jones spoke about Catherine Collins in New Orleans, Patrice Enders in Georgia, the Freeman family in Oklahoma, a couple shot and burned. Their 16-year-old daughter and her best friend remain missing. He described the cases in such detail that even seasoned police officers were on the verge of believing they had solved a series of unsolved murders spanning the entire southeastern United States. However, during the trial, Jones retracted every single confession. His reason was very simple. The confessions were lies, he said. He had fabricated them all just to secure better prison conditions. A phone call with his mother, a decent meal, a few hours of visitation, nothing more. At sentencing, facing public outrage, he said that God will have the final say, that one day he'll be a free man. He'll write him a book and laugh his ass off. On September 15, 2004, the day before Hurricane Yvonne was set to tear through, in a small community near Satsuma called Turnerville, Jones had taken the alias John Paul Chapman and hired himself out to a local couple, Mark and Kim Bentley, to help reinforce their home. By then, Oklahoma already had a warrant out for his arrest. Serious sex crime charges including rape with a foreign object, sodomy, failure to register as a sex offender, and 3 counts of felony bail jumping. While working on the house, Jones, using the excuse that many homeless people would occupy vacant houses during the hurricane and that he needed a gun for self-defense, learned that Mark had hidden a .25 caliber handgun in his bedroom closet. On the 16th, a woman named Lisa Nichols returned to Turnerville after waiting for Hurricane Yvonne to pass. She was Kim's neighbor. While she was chatting with Kim, Jones overheard her telling Kim that she was single and lived alone. The 17th, the Bentley household slowly emptied. Mark finished up some backyard repairs and drove 30 minutes to a fast food joint for burgers. Kim took the kids out, and Mark's cousin, Coleman, went to visit a friend and help fix his house. Jones was the only one left. Armed with the knowledge that Lisa lived alone, he grabbed that .25 caliber pistol and a package of Bud Light beers and walked into her house. Inside, he raped Lisa at gunpoint, then fired 3 shots into her. To cover his tracks, he went back to the Bentley house for gasoline cans, dragged her body into the bathtub, doused her with fuel, and set her on fire. When he was done, he strolled back to the Bentley's house, changed his clothes, took a shower, and waited for everyone to return as if nothing had happened. The next day, Lisa's daughter and son-in-law arrived in Turnerville. With Hurricane Yvonne having passed through, they'd tried calling Lisa and got no answer, so, fearing something had happened, they came to check on her. The neighborhood's power lines were down, the house still without electricity. So Lisa's son-in-law took a flashlight and searched the house, and then finding her charred remains in the bathtub. After found the scene, Lisa's daughter ran to the Bentley house to tell them to call the police. Officers sealed off the crime scene and, following standard procedure, began questioning those present, Mark, Jones, and others. Jones refused outright, but at that stage the questioning was voluntary and under the Fifth Amendment, so he didn't owe anyone a reason for his silence. Early on the morning of September 19th, Jones slipped out of Turnerville without a word, and meanwhile, investigators found 3.25 caliber bullets lodged in the walls at the crime scene. During questioning, Mark mentioned he had a .25 pistol at home and turned it over to police. Examination showed it had been fired recently, and ballistics matched it to the murder weapon. Because they possessed the murder weapon, Mark, Kim, Coleman were brought into interrogation. There, Coleman recalled that the pistol might have been taken by Chapman. He knew where it was kept. At the same time, investigators still at the crime scene found an empty can of Bud Light with fingerprints on it. They ran the prints against those taken when Jones had been detained under the Chapman alias, and perfect match. In the early hours of September 21st, Jones was arrested, and the manhunt gradually peeled back his real identity. At first, the Mobile County Sheriff's Office found that their suspect Chapman's birth date and social security number matched a prisoner currently serving time in Missouri. Then the real Chapman, questioned by authorities, stated that his mother had sold his identity and social security card to a fugitive named Jeremy Bryan Jones. In order to confirm further, they obtained fingerprint samples from Jones's earlier arrest in Miami, Oklahoma, ran the comparison, and finally established that their suspect Chapman was Jones. Jones stonewalled and deflected every question from investigators. "I'm not saying I wasn't over at her house," he said. "I'm saying I did not kill her." But forensic testing had already confirmed the murder weapon was the Bentley's pistol, and the fingerprints on that empty beer can were his. Cornered by the evidence, Jones shifted his story, admitted responsibility for Lisa's death, and pinned it all on methamphetamine. He claimed that day he and Lisa had smoked meth together and had sex, but then Lisa suddenly complained of chest pain, then stomach pain, and shortly after, she died in the bathroom. Upon discovering her body in a drug-addled state, he fired 3 shots into her head and burned the corpse. But this version collapsed almost immediately because his next confession kept changing. The second time, he admitted breaking into Lisa's house armed with the intent to rape, but when he couldn't perform, he flew into a rage, covered her head with a towel, and shot her. By the third version, it was all just an accident. During this period, Jones made several phone calls from county jail to his mother, friends, acquaintances, and his live-in partner, Vicki Freeman. Once investigators located these people, they were questioned for more information about Jones. It turned out Jones' criminal behavior was closely linked to his severe methamphetamine addiction. He was a serial killer twisted by lies and drugs, who had exhibited antisocial and aggressive tendencies since childhood. Jones was born on April 12, 1973, in Miami, Oklahoma. By 16, he had picked up not just alcohol but a drug habit. Neighbors described him with vacant eyes, paranoid and agitated, clearly riding out a meth high. Jones himself embraced the thug mentality. He called himself a junkie and a drunk who did terrible things under the influence. In January 1990, he was arrested for assaulting a boy and the boy's mother. Police charged him with 2 counts of assault, but both were dropped after the victims reconciled with Jones. On November 5, 1995, he was charged with rape in Oklahoma and skipped bail after posting bond. Then on January 10th, he was arrested again for rape and illegal methamphetamine possession. A day later, a woman reported to police that Jones had sexually assaulted her at gunpoint. Jones first served 2 years on the drug possession charge, and after his 1997 release, he was detained on the rape charges. On his attorney's advice, Jones agreed to plead guilty, but because the female victim feared testifying, his 3 rape charges were reduced to sexual battery. In the end, he received only 5 years probation for assault and sexual battery. During probation, he was required to attend court-ordered sex offender counseling, but he performed terribly, ignored court orders, and twice refused to provide DNA samples. In 2000, due to severe probation violations plus 2 new rape allegations, the court revoked Jones's probation and issued an arrest warrant. So he began his life on the run. Later in Joplin, Missouri, he met Chapman's mother at a bar. Using his charm and smooth talk, he won her over and convinced her to sell her son's identity and social security card for $50. From then on, Jones operated under the Chapman alias, and this carefully calculated strategy worked successfully for a long time. In December 2000, Jones relocated to Tuscaloosa, Alabama, where he scraped by mainly on odd jobs, evading capture while adjusting to life under the Chapman alias, essentially marking this period as the calm before his return to violence. In 2003, he moved to Georgia, and on May 1st, he met Freeman in Douglasville. In front of Freeman, he comes across as kind, gentle, and considerate, but in front of some neighbors, he constantly makes disparaging remarks and jokes about women, such as, "What do you tell a woman with 2 black eyes?" "Nothing, you already told the bitch twice." In October 2003, Jones was arrested for disorderly conduct. Taken to the police station, his fingerprints were run through the system, but a technical malfunction meant his true identity was never flagged or matched. After paying the administrative fine, Jones was released and left Georgia, spending several weeks in New Orleans, Louisiana. In late January 2004, he returned to Georgia. Shortly thereafter, he was arrested in Atlanta for trespassing, pleaded guilty as Chapman, and received 3 months in county jail. Upon release, he was arrested again for drug possession, pleaded guilty as Chapman once more, and the court showed leniency, handing him another 3-month sentence. Finally, following his September release, he left Georgia and headed to Alabama, and it was there that he murdered Lisa. During one police interview, Freeman let slip something she hadn't intended. She believed Jones was responsible for the death of Amanda Greenwell. That was a 16-year-old girl who had been their neighbor in Douglasville, Georgia. Amanda disappeared on March 12, 2004. Her body was found on March 21st. The autopsy revealed she had been raped, beaten, and her neck snapped. Following this lead from Freeman, investigators interrogated Jones again. During the interrogation, Jones flatly denied killing Amanda himself. However, strangely enough, he voluntarily confessed to 20 other murders, which spanned nearly 12 years and occurred across 5 states. 8 of these murders were difficult to investigate due to a lack of details, as Jones could not recall the victims' names or the locations where he had disposed of the bodies. The first murder Jones confessed to occurred in 1992. At that time, he had moved with his girlfriend to Baxter Springs, Kansas, to live with his high school friend Justin. On May 9th, Justin married Jennifer. However, just days after their wedding, while Justin was at work, someone broke into their home and stabbed Jennifer to death. During the initial investigation, based on Justin's testimony, Jones had been listed as a suspect, but with no credible evidence against him at the time, he was cleared. In his confession, Jones admitted to murdering Jennifer, and his motive was unrequited love. On February 21, 1996, Jones claimed he broke into the trailer of 38-year-old Daniel Oakley in Delaware County, Oklahoma, shot Oakley and his roommate Doris Harris, then burned the trailer down. After Jones's confession, the Miami Police Department reopened the investigation to verify his involvement, comparing his prints to fingerprints found inside Oakley's vehicle, but no match. In early September 1999, Jones said he wanted to buy drugs and met 19-year-old Justin Hutchings in Pitcher. On September 11th, he and Hutchings drank and used drugs at a local bar. Hours later, Hutchings died of an overdose in the street, and Jones claimed he had intentionally injected Hutchings with a lethal dose of methamphetamine laced with some unidentified chemical. On December 29, 1999, Jones claimed he committed a quadruple murder in Welch. The victims were 40-year-old Danny Freeman, his wife Kathy, their 16-year-old daughter Ashley, and her friend Loria. It was Ashley's birthday and Loria had come to celebrate. Jones said after entering the house he shot Danny and Kathy in the head at close range, set the house on fire, then forced the 2 girls at gunpoint to a wooded area near the Kansas border, where he raped and shot them. But the facts proved Jones was not the killer. In 2018, after a prolonged investigation, police arrested Ronnie Bissick, who, along with Warren Welch and David Pennington, was identified as the actual perpetrator. Jones's role in the case was merely that of a mistaken confessor. The next victim was 38-year-old Tina Mayberry. On October 31, 2002, after attending a Halloween party at a bar in Douglasville, Georgia, Mayberry was attacked while walking through the parking lot. Jones's version was that he met a woman dressed as Betty Boop at the bar, convinced her to leave with him, then assaulted her, stabbing her repeatedly in the chest and abdomen. Later, the bar owner and staff confirmed that Jones had indeed been a regular there before Mayberry's death, but without sufficient evidence, he was never charged. The last 2 murders Jones confessed to were those of 46-year-old Catherine Collins and 38-year-old Patrice Enders. According to Jones, in early January 2004, he met Catherine in New Orleans, Louisiana, raped and stabbed her, then finished her off with a jackhandle. On April 15th of that same year, Patrice was reported missing. Jones claimed he had entered her beauty salon merely to ask for directions, but during conversation learned she was alone in the shop. So he pulled a knife, forced her to empty the cash register, then drove her 65 miles to a wooded area where he raped and stabbed her to death. In order to support his claim, Jones even drew a map for investigators, but searches turned up nothing for a long time. It wasn't until December 2005 that Patricia's remains were found, over 10 miles away in Dawson County, nowhere near where Jones had pointed. Although he had confessed to numerous murders, based on the details of certain cases and investigations, Jones was formally indicted for only 3. In late 2004, he was charged with the murders of Lisa and Amanda. Then, in late January 2005, Catherine's murder was added. Jones's trial was originally scheduled for August 15, 2005, but his attorney requested a psychiatric evaluation first, causing a delay. That evaluation found that while Jones had mental health issues, he was competent to stand trial. On October 19th, the trial began. The prosecution relied mainly on Jones's confession and fingerprint evidence, Coleman's testimony, the murder weapon, and DNA test results. Even though Jones publicly retracted his confession and all previous serial killer claims, the jury still convicted him of Lisa's murder. On December 1, 2005, the judge formally sentenced him to death by lethal injection, telling Jones to his face that he was a danger to civilized society. Jones responded right there in court, "God will have the final say. One day I'll be a free man, I'll write me a book and laugh my ass off." Later, the charges in Amanda's and Catherine's cases were dropped. The first reason for this was that investigators lacked sufficient physical evidence in both cases. The second reason was that Jones was sitting on death row in Alabama, so any rush to prosecute the other cases was gone. Since entering the death row unit at Hallman Correctional Institution, Jones and his attorneys have been attempting to overturn his death sentence. However, in 2010, the state appellate court upheld the original verdict. Since then, the order for his execution by lethal injection has never been signed, and he has remained on death row. Time has passed, and he has not changed. He shows no remorse. In a prison interview, he said, "I am not going to beg for mercy. The ones who want me dead should be the ones begging for mercy."